Hello friends. Today we are going to discuss about tips for disaster relief volunteers. I am Dr. Suresh Badadmat, Professor of Psychiatry, working at NIMANS, Bangalore. Before I start my presentation, I would like to place this disclaimer. This presentation is for academic and training purpose only. They are not the law themselves or guidelines or substitute for governmental advisory or guidelines. Please contact experts from respective and relevant field of disaster for opinion. For legal opinion, please do contact an advocate. For clinical opinion, please do contact a psychiatrist or a registered medical practitioner. Let's discuss about the important practical tips a disaster relief volunteer should know. First, if you want to work as a disaster relief volunteer, think before you leap into the disaster zone. Before you go to the disaster zone, discuss with your family members and also take their consent. Tell them where you are going, how you are going, what is your contact number, what is your agenda to go to the disaster zone. Be ready anytime. Once, because the disaster, when it occurs, it does not tell anybody or it does not give you warning. And as soon as you come to know there is a disaster, you need to inform your family members and immediately leave to the disaster zone. Before you leave to the disaster zone, talk to the relief providing agencies. Before that, you need to prepare yourself to enter into a disaster zone. Enroll yourself into certain agencies or governmental agencies. Undergo certain training with regard to disaster, such as first aid physical training, first aid psychological training. Such kind of training you should learn. At the same time, you need to have a good physical fitness because you are going to a disaster zone. You need to keep yourself also safe. Suppose you are unable to go to a disaster zone because of various reasons. You can help the disaster affected zone being smart. Either you can participate in blood donation camps, you can donate blood, you can provide funds, you can raise funds to the disaster affected survivors, collecting relief material and sending it to the disaster affected zone, and in various other ways you will be able to contribute to the disaster relief work. But however, immediately after the disaster, there will be spontaneous, unaffiliated volunteers will be in huge number who want to go to the disaster zone. Yes, this is a potential, but at the same time, threat to the disaster zone. We need to be very careful. We need to tap this potential of unaffiliated, spontaneous volunteer. We need to make sure these volunteers, when they go to the disaster zone, they do not create another disaster in a disaster zone. Because these volunteers may have a good intention, but in the disaster zone, already the resources are meager. These volunteers may cause constraint and also burden on the meager resources. Hence, managing this influx of unaffiliated volunteers, untrained volunteers, thousands in number in the disaster zone is a big challenge. Hence, there should be a coordinator dealing with the volunteers. At the same time, they sometimes, if the volunteers' potential is not tapped, they may come as a hindrance to provide relief work. Further, they may drain the available meager resources. And also, we need to plan before disaster only, that is pre-disaster, we need to have these networks of unaffiliated influx of these volunteers who may want to come and work, train them, keep them prepared, have various social media network so that you can contact them and pull them into the disaster relief work. Hence, pre-disaster training of these volunteers has to be done. Otherwise, during the disaster, when they come in, they may not be of any help. And you need to understand, before disaster, you need to train them. Hence, the whole concept of principle, what we consider disaster relief work, stands on important 6R. Being prepared, that is readiness. Immediately responding, that is, if you are able to have an army of relief workers, imagine you'll be able to mitigate this suffering. Relief, sustained rescue work, it may require 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. Rehabilitation in the long term. These volunteers some of them may work for longer duration. Further, recovery and resilience. So, in all these 6 areas, the volunteers play a very important role. Especially, they may be from NGO, they may be from governmental agencies, they may be a public at large who want to help in the disaster area. Practical tips number 2. Relief volunteers should know about the disaster zone. How is it the geographical location? What are the different ways of reaching there? What is the locality? What is the resources? How much it has been affected? And also, these volunteers should also know how to manage their stress. They know to have a good self-care with regard to their physical health and mental health care. Imagine a volunteer may be disabled. If he wants to travel in the disaster zone, he needs to know the risk involved. At the same time, the relief worker should keep his address, ID card with him constantly. If possible, even a health insurance card if he has health insurance. Suppose if he is affiliated to a governmental agency, he need to keep that ID card. Further, the relief worker should keep himself safe. He needs to prevent injury. Unnecessary taking risk may put him into a risk and he may become the victim of the disaster. Know how to prevent yourself and also treat infectious diseases. And one need to carry their own first aid kit and also, if possible, some medicine for himself and also for his team. And these volunteer members should also identify when the stress affects it, how the burnout is going to affect him, how to come out of this stress, how to come out of this burnout. And the volunteers should on daily basis keep in touch with the family members. Imagine if a relief worker goes into a disaster zone and he does not contact these family members. Invariably, family members will become panic and they will press a panic button and asking for the various administration to look for you. You have gone for a relief work. And that itself will become a burden on the administration in the disaster zone. And even the relief worker should also understand, do not expect VIP treatment in the area. When you go to a disaster zone, you may be a big person, you may be a governmental agency, you may be even a CEO of a NGO. Don't expect VIP treatment. In a disaster zone, every person is affected. Every person is a survivor, including the administration is a survivor. Even the NGO is also a survivor. So don't expect VIP treatment. Carry solar powered lanterns, lamps, battery charging mobile phones or mobile bank, satellite phones. So which can be used by solar, that needs to be carried by you. Durable shoes because you need to travel, you may need to walk, lightweight clothes, refillable water bottles like steel bottles can be taken, protein bars, and some food can be carried. And whenever you are going to the disaster affected zone, carry organizational ID. That means if you are working for an organization, carry your ID card. Carry certain letterheads because you may have to give this letterhead in writing to some people for requesting for help or providing relief agencies. Pen, paper, documentation equipment such as cameras, maybe video cameras, audio recording, those kind of equipments you need to carry by yourself. But remember, when you go to a disaster zone, don't expect VIP treatment. Practical tip number 3. Again, be ready to stay in the camps with people under the tree or in the open sky. That means, again, don't expect to be a VIP. You have volunteered to help there, or you have been deputed to go and help the survivors. Don't have this VIP syndrome. You will be going there and you may cause stress or strain to the meager resources. And don't expect disaster zone officials to provide you care. That will be too much to expect. Don't do this. If you are expecting VIP treatment in the disaster zone, please don't enter to the disaster zone. Practical tip number 4. Communication and network. As soon as the disaster strike, it may be floods, it may be earthquake, it may be avalanche. Immediately after the disaster, invariably, transportation and communications will be affected. Hence, there will be a huge challenge for the relief workers, administration, NGOs, communicating and networking. Hence, every effort should be made to establish communication, transportation, and networking. Immediately, the relief agencies, The administration do the need assessment and disseminate information what is required in certain area. Meet local health department, meet the NGOs, and use social media to disseminate information. We require help in this area, and this kind of help is required. Here, using social media responsibly is very essential. Moving to the practical tips number 5. Avoid mental health label. Whenever you want to provide any services, especially in the camp, talk to the administrator of the camp, whomever it may be. It may be a principal, it may be a administration from the district administration, or it may be a police officer. Talk to them. Discuss with them what you are going to do. Take their permission. Even if they don't give permission, talk to them next day. Try to influence by some other people. Don't fight with them. Because even the person who is the administrator is under tremendous stress. You need to take them into confidence. Once you have taken the confidence, go and announce in the public health system or a public system telling that we are here available for providing services. It may be health services, it may be relief material. Don't use mental health labels. We are here as a psychiatrist. We want to treat psychotic patient, the alcohol addiction patient. Don't use those words. Use a symptom model. For example, in tsunami, when we used to go to the healthcare camps, we used to announce whoever has difficulty in falling asleep, whoever has children who are very cranky or who are clinging behavior, who are constantly crying, or who are very anxious, you need to come to the relief camp or health camp. Those kind of using public health announcement system will work. Again, social media can be leveraged to provide information where to seek help. So these kinds of information need to be disseminated in social media. And again, remember this. Disaster survivors are normal people in an abnormal situation. It is not that all survivors have mental illness or some other problem. So you need to demedicalize the response of survivors in disaster zone. That you need to remember in mind. Again, I will repeat. Disaster survivors are normal people in abnormal situation. Moving to the practical tips number 6. Very essential is whenever you go to a disaster zone, your first job is relief and second is advocacy and capacity building. That means you need to focus on community empowerment so that they will not only learn how to deal with the disaster at this time, even in the next disaster. That means you need to teach fishing to the community members. Avoid giving fish. That means if you give fish, you are making them, disabling them. You are not giving any new skills. Especially in the disaster-prone areas, you need to train them. You need to empower the community. Helicopter services of providing relief is good for 1 to 2 days, maybe 1 week. Later, the community has to take care of themselves and also be prepared for the next disaster. Hence, you need to deprofessionalize the disaster services. Here, you need not say that only this person will provide services. No. This is a humanitarian services. Any person can help the survivors. Hence, you need to network and train school authorities, education department, Anganwadi, Asha worker, camp authorities, electricity department, health department, communication department. So all these departments, including the administrator, need to be trained with regard to disaster management. Practical tips number 7. Never ever criticize disaster relief work or any service provider in ground zero situation. What does it mean? If you are a disaster relief worker, as a volunteer you have gone there, never ever criticize the relief work. The simple reason is the people who are providing services, the administration are also the survivors. They not only have lost their family members, their financial support, their property they have lost, but still they are trying to help other people. Never ever go and criticize them. Engage them. Talk to them. De-stress them. Do stress management to them. And try to help them. That will help the disaster zone. By going and criticizing in the ground zero will cause a lot of problem. Not only there is a disaster, you are provoking a survivor. And who is the administrator? If we provoke him, the relief work will stop. That should not happen. For God's sake, don't go to a disaster zone and create one more disaster. So be aware of this. Practical tips number 8. Understand the camp dynamics. That is relief camps. When you enter into the disaster zone, understand where are these camps, relief camps, how they have distributed, what kind of people have been put in various camps, what are the dynamics, who are the administrator in charge, how to network with the NGOs, whether certain camps are disintegrated, whether the repatriation of the survivors is occurring, how the displacement of the survivors are occurred, how far from their habitat they have been displaced. All these information you should know, because if you are going to one relief camp, you need to understand what kind of people are there, what are their sensitivity, what are their cultural background, whether you are going to a community where women are not supposed to talk to a men. In such a scenario, you have to be very careful. You need to send volunteers who are female. That means you need to be very sensitive about the cultural needs and also social needs of the survivors. Practical tips number 9. Working with high risk population. Especially in disaster zone, most of them are survivors or victims. But certain population are at high risk of developing mental illness or injuries. Those are children, elderly, people from poor socioeconomic background, that is poverty, people with disability, gender minority, persons with mental illness, and also persons from backward community. Why are they called high risk? Simple reason. These people have to fight with normal people to get the relief material, to get the relief services. And many a time, gender minority people, persons with mental illness, persons from backward community will not be allowed into entering into certain camp, or else they will not be given relief material. Hence, there will be discrimination. Hence, you need to focus your operation, your relief work on high-risk population. Here, we are working with children in the relief camp. See, we are doing informal art therapy, and this was done in Uttarakhand flash floods. We have also published with regard to informal education, and this is one of the painting done by or the drawing done by a child who is around 10-year-old. This is the tsunami, how it affected his school, the health establishment, and how the people are running away from the tsunami waves. That has been drawn by a child who is 10-year-old, and he was able to explain the whole thing. Similarly, here is one more drawing done by a 5-year-old kid. Here, she clearly said she saw dead bodies in the flash flood of Uttarakhand floating in the river. At the same time, she was standing on the hill and she was able to see how people were running. And again, you will be able to understand what are the emotions in the children by art therapy. So you can do this informal counseling, and this has to be done by a qualified professional. But however, if you are trained in this art therapy, why not? And suppose if you are able to do drawing, informal education, please do that. At the same time, you need to understand, you need to engage elderly population. Many a time in disaster, the elderly will carry survivor guilt. Imagine if their children have died, if their grandchildren have died, and these elderly couple will feel that why they have been alive. The God should have taken them. They may go to depression. They may even attempt suicide. Hence, you need to engage them. You need to counsel them. And you need to remove the survival guilt by doing validation of their emotions. And this is one of the important publications we have published in American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry with regard to psychological impact of tsunami on elderly survivors. Practical tips number 10. Understand the role of counselors. Understand the role of the volunteers in the disaster zone. First and the foremost, every relief volunteer should know what is prevention, plan for prevention, at the same time get trained, know about stress management, know about physical first aid, know about psychological first aid, and also physically being fit is very essential. At the same time, during the rehabilitation phase, what else he can do? Whether he can do counseling, whether he can do training, whether he can involve the children in informal education, or else providing relief material. Every person in disaster zone can contribute in one or the other way. What are the preventive works? Such as first aid, as I mentioned, medical first aid, psychological first aid, basic steps of counseling, trauma counseling, identifying mental illness and referral, life skills training, implementing district mental health program, helping the doctors to come to the camp, identifying and referring them, providing medicines, doing stress management to the relief workers, and also identifying people with substance use, developing a treatment network, engaging both NGOs, private sector, and public sector in providing services for the disaster relief. At the same time, engaging children. That is very essential, especially in the camp. Immediately after the disaster, there will be chaos. And hence, if you are able to normalize the children life at the earliest, their resilience will be more, their impact on their mental health will be less. Hence, you need to do informal education in the disaster zone for children. It may be drawing, dancing, singing, games, sports, indoor games, drama, storytelling, yoga, meditation, group activities, and so forth. Be as innovative as possible to engage the children. And if possible, talk to the administration to start formal education at the earliest. If there are teachers in the survivors group, they can start taking classes to the children. Normalize the children's life at the earliest. This is very important. This will decrease the mental health impact. Practical tips number 11. In a disaster relief team, if you are growing as a group, work in a team, and every evening try to meet. All the team members need to sit together and debrief what they have seen, what they have felt. By debriefing, there will be cognitive restructuring will be occurring. The captain of the team will be able to tell, yes, we can do this next time. Yes, this is the best way to respond. Yes, next time we can move to the other camp. Plan it. Document your experiences on daily basis. Do diary writing. If you do that, you can go back, either you can report it or else you can send it in social media telling where the help is required. Carry required medicine. That is very essential because your team member may be ill or he may be having asthmatic attacks. By carrying this medicine, you'll be able to help your team members. One more important thing. Here you can see the disaster relief worker has to walk sometimes for kilometers, maybe 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers. That means physical health of a volunteer should be at the top notch. He should be physically fit and mentally fit. Then only he should enter into the disaster zone. Imagine if he is not physically fit and he goes as a volunteer to provide services and he himself becomes ill. Look at the disaster again here. He has become burden on the disaster area. That should not happen. And every day in the disaster zone, if you are a relief worker, plan for the next day. But be flexible. Immediately there will be unexpected calls because once you have told that we are available, there will be calls from different areas of the strata of the society asking for your help. Be ready to provide services. Many a time, if you are getting burnt out, recognize it, take breaks. You need to take breaks in rotation. Like for example, one person will take break on Monday, second person maybe on Tuesday. So on rotation basis, the relief workers can take break so that the stress do not affect them and the burnout does not touch them. Practical tips number 12. This is the last one. Be ready for strategic action. You are a relief worker. And immediately after the disaster, when the relief camps are set up, VIP visits are common. VIP visits may be for various reasons. Maybe because of administration, because of political reason, or else to provide relief materials. In such a scenario, if you are from the relief agency or a volunteer, keep certain pamphlets, maybe 1 page or 2 page. Keep psychoeducation material. And whenever you get an opportunity, talk to the VIP and say, these are the things we have required. These are the things we should do. These are the things, like for example, to start the schools at the earliest. We require medicines in this area. We require help from this area. We need to talk to the media with regarding to this. We require the national mental health program to be implemented in this area so that the people of this area can bounce back very fast. There is a substance use menace. How to go about that. If there are issues, those kinds of pamphlets, keep it ready. If you come to know tomorrow a VIP is coming, prepare a notes and give it to the VIP, the person who has come. Definitely, because they are also sensitive during this period. They will do the best to help you. And at the same time, be sensitive and aware of interacting with media. That means you need to engage the media. Do not run away from the media. If you don't give appropriate information, the media and the journalist will write whatever they want. That should not happen. Hence, you need to engage them. Give printed materials before in hand. Tell them these are the important points which every survivor should know. That is, what are the things they have to do? For sleeplessness, what they have to do? If they require help, where to seek help? Where are the agencies available? Hence, you need to talk to the media. When you talk to the media, experienced person should interact with them. And again, when you are interacting with the media, never ever criticize the administration or the relief agencies or any NGOs providing services. Make all efforts to interact with politicians, leaders, and policymakers so that you can convey the requirement of the survivors. And this is one of the example where we have interacted with one of the local newspaper and how to take care of mental health of the survivors was done. And there are sometimes you may have to do certain research. Please take before in hand the ethics committee approval. That means pre-disaster approval. Keep all your instruments, scales ready, printed, and whenever the disaster occurs, carry that and do ethical research. Don't do unethical research in the disaster zone. My dear friends, to conclude, you need to remember, survivors are normal people in abnormal situation. And if you are going as a relief volunteer in the disaster zone, keep that. Your health is very essential. You need to have your physical health and mental health in a top notch. You go there to provide services. You do not become ill health in that disaster zone. And whenever you provide services, you need to keep in mind community empowerment should be the goal. That means if you are providing services, train the local people, local community, so that they will be able to take care of themselves in the next disaster. Disaster health workers need to remember that primary is a reason to enter the disaster zone is provide relief. Don't have this VIP syndrome. Don't ask for help by yourself, telling that I want this, I want that. That VIP syndrome should be kept away before entering to the disaster zone. Thank you very much for giving your valuable time. Stay safe.